Okay, got it button there. Okay, excellent. All right, well, hello everyone. I'm going to do an official introduction in just a second, but I did want to say that our speaker is unable to be with us right at this moment. She had a family emergency come up today, and she's hoping to be able to join us for some Q&A later on, but what she has sent us instead is a pre-recorded presentation that she'd like us to watch. And so we're going to try and play that pre-recorded presentation, and we will hope that she can join us partway through for Q&A. So that's what we're trying to get sorted out here. And without further ado, what I will do is the official introduction, and then we will go to the pre-recorded presentation. So, good evening, everyone. I want to welcome all of you to our final University of Washington Program on the Environment seminar for fall quarter 2021. Before I introduce tonight's speaker, I want to acknowledge that the University of Washington honors the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. And that we continue to attend as a community to the deeper implications of such land acknowledgements. To that end, it is an honor to be able to introduce Monique Wynecoop, our speaker for today. Monique is a member of the Pit River Maidu tribe of Northern California, but she lives and works on Spokane Tribal homelands in Eastern Washington and Idaho. Monique earned her MS degree in Forest Rangeland Management and Fire Science in 2017 from the University of Idaho. She earned a BS in Ecology and Conservation Biology and Fisheries Resources with a minor in American Indian Studies in 2010. Monique is currently employed by the United States Forest Service as a fire ecologist and tribal liaison as part of the U.S. Forest Service Region 6 Northern Rockies Fire Science Network. She is passionate about facilitating collaborations for better land and ecosystem management and improved resiliency and wellness of human communities. Over the past months, I've been reading a lot about the research and outreach that Monique has been doing, and I'm just incredibly impressed with the kind of work that she does, and I feel really privileged that she is, fingers crossed, going to be here with us today to answer some questions and tell us more about her work. And again, without further ado, what we'd like to do at this point is play a pre-recorded presentation that she has provided for us. And I hope that the sound and visual quality comes through. So let's give it a try. And I guess if it's not working for you, you can maybe type into chat and we can try something different. I believe she gave us a link that you might be able to download onto your own computer if necessary. So let's first try the sharing option. Here we go. Back to the first slide here. And okay.
Hey, thanks for having me today. My name is Monique Wynecoop. I am Pit River and Maidu and living within the ancestral homelands of my children, which are Spokane Tribal members. I am a fire ecologist for Northeastern Washington at a Region 6, and also I work for the Northern Rockies Fire Science Network as a fire ecologist and tribal liaison and help to facilitate tribal engagement within the Rocky Mountain and Northwest regions. So my background's pretty diverse. I have a Master's of Science in Forest, Rangeland, and Fire Sciences from University of Idaho. I also have a Bachelor's of Science in Ecology and Conservation Biology and Fishery Resources, and a minor in American Indian Studies, which focused on treaty rights and tribal water rights. Most of my work, I work closely with our ecology program and also with a lot of monitoring coordination for the Forest Service and also collaboration and science delivery with other agencies. My passion lies in diversity and helping to develop and share tools and techniques for fostering improved collaboration for better land management. So here's some pictures from some of the work that or some of the recent projects that I've been working on. I do help take students, local students, K through 12, and members of the public into the field and take them to visit burn sites, learn about the monitoring that we do, and help foster a passion for just the ecology of the landscape and the work that's done to help manage it. There's also a lot of work that I've been doing to help annually develop like fire ecology lessons to help deliver the most current science to not just our youth, but also just to the adult public. Just fun ways to interact with them and teach them about just the shifting paradigm about how we're talking about the way that humans have been removed from the landscape and how we're trying to incorporate that human component back in. I've also been involved with the Northern Rockies Fire Science Network in a lot of co-coordination of field trips and workshops, and also in the cohesive strategy workshops, which have been great because they are also, you get to see a lot of different agencies and different tribal agencies share all the cool new things that they're doing in different areas around the United States. Another example of some of the knowledge sharing that I've been able to do with the Northern Rockies Fire Science Network is a TK and Fire biannual newsletter that we just released last year. And we just released the second issue this February. And it's been really successful, and it's constantly changing. And it's just an avenue for people to be able to do shout outs about the different work that's being done related to traditional knowledge in fire and incorporating human fire back into our management practices. So as you can see, a lot of my work as a fire ecologist isn't just related to fuels or our fire and fuels program and operations, but also there's a lot of other issues that I try to bring to light within our communities, scientific and public. Showing how fire is connected to community resiliency and wellness, how it's a huge component of climate adaptation and successful adaptation with our communities. With the wellness, it has to do with not just like our health when it comes to smoke and risk to our communities from fire, but also our mental and spiritual wellness as well, with how the cultural activities related to burning and our communities getting in there and doing some of the burning, how that connects back to our community's mental and spiritual health. It's connected to food sovereignty and community safety, as I mentioned before, but also biodiversity, how we need to interact with our, all different specialists to be able to properly manage fire. Water quality, nutrient cycling, soil health, air quality. And right now, there's just clear paradigm conflicts between the way that our current society views fire and the way that the direction we're going to have to properly manage fire, for our future generations. So the Northern Rockies Fire Science Network and the area that I work in on the Colville National Forest in Northeastern Washington is co-served by the Northwest Fire Science Consortium and the Northern Rockies Fire Science Network. And it's a really unique area ecologically and socially. And this area lies within the ancestral homelands, not just Northeastern Washington, but the area covered by the Northern Rockies Fire Science Network of many different tribes. And I'm not just speaking about the tribes that are the current reservations, but also the ancestral homelands of the tribes that have been displaced due to multiple treaties that have been made and broken.
The Colville National Forest, where I work, contains the ancestral territories of the Kalispel, the Spokane tribe, and also the Confederated Colville Tribes. The ancestral territories of these tribes span far beyond what's known as the current reservation boundaries. It extends all the way into British Columbia, to the Washington coast, down into Oregon, Idaho, and Montana. It's important to learn the history of the local tribes that you're working with and their treaties with the US government, especially the histories of how those treaties have been broken. With the Confederated Colville Tribes, the original reservation boundary extended all the way to British Columbia. And by Act of Congress in 1892, what is now known as the North Half was cut off of that reservation. The Confederated Colville Tribes still call that section the North Half, and a majority of that original reservation is within the boundaries now of the Colville National Forest. The Confederated Colville Tribes retain their treaty rights to hunt and fish and practice other ceremonies and cultural practices within these areas, even though it's not within the reservation boundary. But I also want to make it clear that tribes that don't have treaties with the federal government still have the same rights to be able to practice their cultural practices outside their reservation boundaries. And it's important to recognize that these tribes are going to depend more and more on going outside the reservation boundaries, especially the future generations, in light of climate change. The key to climate adaptation is appropriate collaboration. When I say appropriate collaboration versus cultural appropriation, I'm describing the difference between inviting a group to the table to share in a discussion of how we can better manage the landscape versus inviting a group to the table to collect information for our own means. And that's why I ask, when you're inviting people to the table, communities, tribal or not, it's always important to ask, what is the intent of this project or this research? Who owns the data? And are we asking the right questions? And I'll get more into that. As the Fire and Fuels Monitoring Coordinator on the Colville National Forest, I found myself sitting in a monitoring meeting with other fuels managers, discussing what fuel treatment effectiveness meant and how we can monitor it. I started thinking to myself, how are we affecting the values that are important to my community and to my family's tribe? Values such as fishing, hunting, access to sacred sites, and gathering of medicinal plants. How are we addressing these values and how we're affecting them with our management? And how are we affecting our future generations' access for generations to come? This led to two projects with two neighboring tribes, the Confederated Colville Tribes and the Spokane Tribe. In 2015, the North Star Fire burned 218,000 acres, a majority of which occurred within the reservation boundary of the Confederated Colville Tribes. In 2016, the Cayuse Mountain and the Carpenter Road fires also ended up burning approximately 50,000 acres, a majority of which occurred on the Spokane Indian Reservation. As part of the Colville National Forest Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Program, or CFLRP, I was able to initiate two monitoring projects, one with the Confederated Colville Tribes and the other with the Spokane Tribe. And the primary objective was to look at how we can better facilitate adaptive management and manage for social and cultural values for our communities. There were three primary objectives for these projects. The first was to determine how tribal communities perceive the effects of our fuels treatments on their cultural practices, such as hunting, fishing, and gathering of cultural plants. The next was to evaluate where tribal communities felt that the Colville National Forest fuels treatments should be done or avoided. The next was to understand the effects of our fuels treatments and wildfire on understory vegetation. For these projects, we utilized an online participatory GIS program that was designed by the Rocky Mountain Research Station and their partners. It's called Mapping Meanings. The program allows users to use a spray can tool to map their values and concerns in a fuzzy way without giving up specific locations of those values. The best part about it is that the tribe owns the rights to the data and must approve any use of the raw data after the project is done. The demographics for these projects varied between the two tribes. With the Confederated Colville Tribes, we had 37 tribal participants, ranging in age from college students all the way to elders, many of which currently work for or were retired from natural resource fields with the tribe or the BIA. With the Spokane Tribe, we had 21 participants, a majority of which worked in wildland fire, fuels, forestry, wildlife, and fisheries management. But we really wouldn't have had any participation if it hadn't been for the help and the work and time put into all of this by Chastity Watts, who works with the IRB program for the Confederated Colville Tribes in the BIA, and Vernon Stearns, who works as a fields program manager for the Spokane Tribe. Before the participants started the PGIS mapping exercise, we had some questions at the beginning that helped get people thinking about the effects of different fuels treatments, such as broadcast burning, understory thinning, and also wildfire, on their cultural practices, such as hunting, fishing, gathering of cultural plants, collecting firewood, and OHV, ATV use, etc. The participants then moved on to the mapping questions. There was no limit to how many times they could input an answer, and they used a spray can tool to map the areas that they were concerned about related to the different fuels treatment types. They're also allowed to comment on the mapping that they did to give more detail as to why they chose that spot or the specific techniques they were referring to. The end result is a heat map that shows where to apply treatments or where to avoid. And we ended up using this map for a Sampoil project area. It helped back the decisions of our line officers to move forward with a non-commercial fuels reduction treatment proposed within an inventoried roadless area within the Sampoil project area. The map isn't intended to be used just to go out and propose a project, but more to spark a discussion between the tribe and the Forest Service or any other government agency. It's a talking point that doesn't give away specific locations, but allows people to have a discussion about where values are going to be most impacted by particular treatments. With the map of where to avoid treatments, there was a common theme surrounding sacred areas, historic cultural sites, and riparian zones. And there was a lot of discussion about trust and whether certain practices, fuels reduction practices, would impact these very important cultural resources or natural resources that would affect generations to come. The Spokane Tribe's PGIS map ended up helping them recommend some mechanical thinning and prescribed fire treatments. particularly around the West End community. Some common themes that came up for where to apply treatment was to produce fire breaks or reduce crown fire spread. There was a lot of focus around WUI areas, campgrounds, beach and river access areas, and sacred prayer sites. There was a huge focus on wildlife habitat for hunting. And there was also a lot of discussion about trust that the Spokane Tribal Fire Management Program was protecting their water, cultural, and prayer sites from damage. The map of where to avoid treatments discussed concern for firefighter exposure and health around mines, particularly Midnight Mine in the Blue Creek area. There was also a lot of concern regarding roads from commercial thinning or timber sales, opening up areas to increased OHV and automobile use. They were worried about wildfires burning too hot, damaging timber, firewood, or cultural sites. And there were recommendations to avoid further damage and to allow recovery within wildfire or recently logged areas. The 2015 North Star fire offered a prime opportunity to look at how the understory vegetation responded to wildfire with or without prior broadcast burning or mechanical thinning. At the time that we were working with the Confederated Colville Tribes, we had originally intended to look at our fuels reduction treatments and see how we impacted cultural values. When the North Star fire started burning through these fuels treatments that we were originally planning on putting fire-mon plots in, we decided to implement rapid response protocol. In order to do this, we had to be fire qualled, and we had to know how to do all of the stuff that a wildland firefighter has to do every morning, checking in with a division soup, having a firefighter to be a lookout, being current with our red card, and practicing safety. It was really exciting to be able to go out and look at our fuels treatments and to establish some plots while also being a firefighter and being there right next to the hotshot crews while they're getting ready for a burnout operation. My husband was also fighting fire that season, and I was able to steal him away to be my lookout that year because everyone else was busy and he was pretty much obligated to me since he's my husband. So yeah, he's the smiling man in the photo, enjoying pretty much getting some time away collecting data with his wife. We collected data from units that had either been treated with understory thinning and prescribed burning within 10 years prior to the North Star fire burning it, and units that had not been treated less than 10 years prior to the North Star fire burning through. Both units were on similar slope and aspect. What we found was that average species richness had increased in the thinned and burned units post-wildfire. The Shannon-Weiner diversity increased in thinned and burned units post-wildfire. The untreated units saw higher diversity in the post-wildfire paired plots. We also looked at the abundance of commonly known edible and medicinal plants. The point of this monitoring exercise was to show an adaptive management approach that includes community members and tribal members in the entire process. It's not a linear approach. It's not meant to be a one and done type of process, but rather a process that requires you to revisit and discuss what the effects of our fuels treatments are and how we can better conduct them to manage the values of the community. A main takeaway is that trust is key. It's really crucial to take the time to explain the management practices and questions to the participants, and to be there for any questions or to walk them through the technology. We found that when we were there interacting with the participants as they were going through the questions and the mapping exercise, they felt more at ease with the program and put more time into their response. Respect is key. Allow participants to take all the time they need to give an adequate response. This is important because they're talking about values that affect their lives, that are important to them, especially with elders who came all the way out to interact with us and to discuss the management practices and what was important to them. They needed the time to be able to get adjusted to the program. But they also needed the time to tell stories, to talk with us, and to build that trust, and to know that we respected their opinion and that this wasn't a waste of their time. We also found that it was valuable to tell the story of why we were doing this project. It took time and effort, and almost every single participant wanted to know, why are we doing this? What is the end product? Why is this important? And will it come back to benefit us in the end? And it's really important to think about this with every single project that we do. Why are we doing this? Why is it important? I don't feel like we should be telling people that this is something that we need to do, that this is just our trust responsibility. When it's more than that, it shows.
Okay, well, that was the end of the presentation. Sean, do you think you could activate my video for me?
Your video?
Well, it says the host has stopped my video.
Okay, you should be able to turn it back on yourself, but
Okay.
let's see if you can't then.
Yeah, the host. There we go. The host has asked you to start. Okay, very good. Hopefully this will do it. There we go. Okay, excellent. Okay, well, yeah, so that was the presentation, and I did get a text message from Monique during the presentation. She says she will not be able to join us for Q&A, unfortunately, and she's obviously very apologetic, but this is a pretty serious situation that she has. She also wanted us to know that this presentation was not actually the presentation she had intended to give today, but it was just one that she had ready to go. So that was the best she could do. And again, she's apologetic and actually was really looking forward to this. She did tell me that the presentation she was going to give was really going to emphasize more of the community health aspects of this and the ways in which fire management, and in particular, traditional knowledge and Indigenous fire management techniques are being applied not only to sort of manage fuels and forest fires, but benefit tribes and tribal communities in a spiritual way as well. And so I think that was sort of where she wanted to go with this. The end of that presentation did reference the research paper that she published on that topic, and I'd be happy to send that around later on. But at any rate, I wonder if for those of you who are here, maybe we could have a quick conversation. I'd be curious to get any thoughts that you all might have, and maybe we can share a bit with each other and help answer each other's questions. And I think that might be a useful thing to do. And certainly, this being the last presentation of the series, I'd be happy after we discuss Monique Wynecoop's presentation to maybe broaden the conversation. And if anyone would like to share their takeaways from this quarter's series of seminars, I think that would be a wonderful thing to do if you are willing and available and have the time here. So I'm going to be quiet now and just let folks think for a minute. And if you'd like to share something, go ahead and raise your hand. And Sean, I think you can go ahead and stop the stream.